Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Anybody out there? Okay, that's much better. That's much better. Glad to see all of you here this evening in the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. We're delighted to see such a good crowd come out for this really important event. We're doing a rethinking of what a communication school and a journalism school should be. So for about the past two months or so, 2 years, we've been blowing up the Annenberg School and saying, what should we be when we put it back together? And the term that we've come up with is sort of Annenberg 3.0, which we think of as an innovative, integrated, full-service school in a networked university in the most global and diverse city in the United States of America. And what do I mean by a full-service school? By that, I mean we do journalism. How many people in the room are journalism students? Okay, see your hand, that's good. How many folks are comm students? That's great. Public relations students? Okay, we got public relations. Okay, that's great. And what am I bid for these public relations students here? No, okay. This is one of the few places in the United States of America where you can come and do journalism, communications, public diplomacy, communications across a variety of things, entertainment communication, health communication, and this at a time when technological convergence means that the boundaries between these things are disappearing. And so we like to think that here at the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism that we really are breaking down silos, that we're integrating these things that had never been integrated before because we now have these great technologies that will allow us to do that. There are a couple of great examples of breaking down silos and doing innovative, cool stuff, and those are the two people that I'm going to introduce next. The great news is that we have a really cool faculty who are working on this. One of them is Professor Josh Kun. Josh Kun is one of these unusual people. He writes these great theoretical textbooks that people like. He writes liner notes for CDs. He produces CDs. And he works at all sorts of borders and intersections. One of those borders and intersections is a literal border and intersection between Mexico and the United States. So when I'm looking for Josh, I don't know where the heck he's going to be, whether he's in Tijuana or San Diego or Shanghai or New York, crossing borders and creating content and creating ideas. So I'm going to, in just a second, introduce him. And then he's going to introduce Quincy. And I just want to say a quick thing about Quincy, and I hope this will come up in the discussion. Not only is he deeply interested and knowledgeable about the content, about making films, but he's also an educator. He's a professor for the 21st century, if you will, because he doesn't want to just present the content, as he will describe, I'm sure. He sets these things up so that there's an intro to the content that has history and context. And then there's the movie, then there's the content. And at the end of it, there's a platform for discussion, for interaction. And so when I say he's a professor for the 21st century, I really, really mean that, and he's really pointing the way in a great direction. But let me call to the stage Josh Kun, Professor Kun, a great colleague, a great friend, and then he in turn will introduce our special guest. Josh, it's all yours.
Ernie, you mentioned that I might be in Shanghai. I've never been there, and that's a hint. So let me know if we can work that out. Before I say anything further, I want to just announce and make sure you all know this film is not rated. It's not yet rated. It's not rated. Which we should take very seriously. So if anybody in this room thinks they might have an issue with a not rated film and all that will inevitably imply, then I would leave now. We are not responsible from this moment on, and that's all I'll say. First off, I want to give a very special thanks to Marissa Gonzalez, who I don't know where she is, over there in the corner, who really has made this event possible, putting it together, producing it, all of this work that goes into all these incredible events that we get to attend all too often goes unrecognized. So I want to give a big round of applause to Marissa for pulling it together. It's a really rare day when I get to stand up here and introduce the pioneer of Swedish hip-hop, which QD3 was as a breakdancer, as a rapper, and as a producer. But he is probably best known for his work as a music producer and a songwriter, working with people like LL Cool J, Ice Cube, Too Short, Mac 10, and Tupac. Also as a film producer, most notably the Beef DVD series. It's like the Saw series of hip-hop. It's like Beef 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. As an executive producer of films like Made in America, Tupac Shakur, Thug Angel, forthcoming Q the Man, and the film we're going to see tonight, The Carter. And of course, as Dean Wilson mentioned, he is the head of QD3 Entertainment, a pretty incredible attempt to merge the worlds of urban pop culture and social media. See what we can do when we bring these two worlds together to spawn the innovation and the cultural practices of the future. To introduce the Carter, please give a very warm Annenberg welcome to QD3.
I'd like to say thanks to Dean and Ernest for having me here and being able to show the movie. And it's funny, you gave me credit for always putting a half an hour of sort of history in the beginning of our films. But I just wanted to say that this is one of the few films where we have not been able to do that because we sat down with Wayne in the beginning of the film and we were like, we wanted this whole chronological story about you and get in-depth interviews and all that. And he was like, you know what? I don't want to do anything formatted or anything traditional. I just want to be me, you know. And he said, just follow me, trust me, it's going to work, you know. So I hope you guys enjoy what we came up with, and it's very intimate and you know, it's definitely. I think an unconventional approach to an urban documentary, so I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
So we'd like to have a conversation that is led by your comments and questions. So we will start over here.
Thanks. She's going to start freestyling.
Just kidding. First of all, thank you, QD3, for coming and sharing that with us. That was a really deep, intimate look into Lil Wayne that we never really see, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you guys.
I don't know, the whole time I was watching this movie, I just took note of, this is Lil Wayne that we don't see. We see the crazy Lil Wayne on stage. We don't see this intimate look, what he really does and what really is in that styrofoam cup. But something that was running through my mind was, all these musical geniuses, Tupac, Michael Jackson, all of these musical geniuses, they have kind of, the same running pattern. They have these thoughts that flow continually, and they have kind of the same creative process. And towards the end of the movie, he was asked the question about how does he foresee his future and how does he foresee his death. And they alluded to Tupac and Biggie's demise. And with how intimately you worked with Wayne, do you see him kind of running along that same path that these great musical geniuses have also followed?
You know, in terms of passing away?
Well, not exactly that, but where do you see, they're all kind of, with the substance abuse and the, so smart, but just so they fall into these traps that they can't really get out of.
So where do I see this ending up, you mean?
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, he's going to jail in February. Hopefully that'll be a turning point in his life, you know. But it's hard to say. As of right now, he lives life on his own terms, you know, from what we can tell. And from what you probably saw in the film, you know. So, hopefully this will be a point of maturity for him, you know, when he goes to jail, because, you know, he's got 3 kids coming this year, and, you know, he's got some things to look forward to, for sure, you know, and a great career. So I think, from what I could tell creatively, I see him having a long-term career because, you know, I think when you focus just on the fame or just on the money, you know, it comes and goes. But I think when you're like him, where, you know, he just sold 1 million records, he's like, all right, get off the bus, I got to do more songs. I think that shows that he's like an athlete that's always trying to get better every single day. He's trying to get more points, you know. And I think that leads me to believe that he'll be around for a while creatively, you know, if he can, you know, stay free and sort of mature in certain areas.
Oh, that kind of leads to my second question. With this stint that he has to deal with in jail, where do you see like his career going after that? Do you think his fan base will change, or his musical like genius will evolve while he's in jail? Or
I mean, Tupac did some of his best work, you know, after prison. That's hard to say. That's hard to say, you know. I think it depends on how he handles it, you know, and also how his time, you know, how he spends his time, you know what I mean? I think he could actually use that time to record even more rhymes in his head, you know what I mean? So by the time he comes out, it's just super productive. So ideally, that's what happens, you know.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cortez. I have two questions. One, were there any other artists that you were considering when you were making this documentary, or did you just go directly for Lil Wayne? And my second question was, as far as it talked a little bit about his label, but the business of Lil Wayne, is there any reason that was kind of neglected or not spotlighted as much?
For the business, in what sense?
Like the label he started and other artists that he's bringing in to record and things like that.
Well, I think that the way this documentary went, I mean, first you asked me about how, if we had looked at any other artists besides him. I mean, we've only done one other biography before, and that was the Tupac biography. And that's actually Tupac's first manager right there, Layla Steinberg. And she also co-produced that. She's the one who, you know, fed him the poetry and a lot of that stuff and really helped shape him as an artist. So, but anyways, no, I think there's certain things that you only see so often in artists, you know, certain artists that are special and sort of own the lane that they create for themselves. And I think Tupac, you know, Ice Cube and Lil Wayne are those people that I've seen in my lifetime in hip-hop, you know. So when I saw the fact that he was like sort of fearless in his approach in creating the music, he didn't really care what other people thought about it. He would just do whatever sort of came to mind, as you see in the film. And the fact that he just constantly is striving to be better and isn't so worried about the fame and all that other stuff, that's really what, that coupled with the fact that I had heard that he wanted to go, he went back to school and was trying to get a degree after he had a lot of success. You know, he probably had like 4 or 5 gold records prior to that. So when I saw those things combined, it just seemed like a real interesting subject, you know, and I hadn't really seen anybody else in the field, in the industry that was doing that, you know, that was sort of an original, fearless creator. And I think that's what we need to sort of drive things forward creatively, especially in this time when a lot of the music sounds the same. And then on the business side, I think we caught him like 7 months before he went platinum and became like Lil Wayne and Young Money, you know what I mean? So I think really this film was caught like about 6 months before the platinum album came out, and then about 3 months after. So it was really sort of when everything was starting to take shape. So we didn't really know who a lot of the artists were at the time. We were focusing on Wayne, and then a few months after that, they started becoming more prominent. So this was really when a lot of things were shaping.
Hi, my question is about the inclusion of his daughter in the video. I noticed that it was really brief, and I was wondering what precautions were taken and whose decision was it to include her. I mean, most celebrities, you know, don't want their children in the media and all that kind of stuff. So whose decision was it, or, you know, how was that decided?
I think it was a joint decision. Really, you know, we had originally planned to put a lot of, you know, family members in the piece, and then I think his mother was reluctant to do an interview for whatever reason. You know, some people just don't like cameras, you know. So whoever, you know, was comfortable with the camera did interviews. So Baby and Reginae.
Hi. My question is about the filming. Like, at what point during the filming or the production or the editing did you feel it was important to keep the camera on people when, you know, after they answered the questions? Because to me, that's when like a lot of their guard went down, and you were able to really see something about them. I think that was a really important part of how it puts the whole story together.
Sort of the unspoken moments, you mean?
Yeah, the unspoken moments, like those few seconds, like after the questions were asked, and
Right.
just stayed on that person's face.
Yeah.
It's like, you working with artists all the time, you see that, or even regular people out there, we rehearse a lot what we say.
Yeah.
But then after the question is gone and the camera's gone, like, what's on their face?
I think that's the difference between like how like a VH1 would approach it versus how we had to approach it. Was you know, a lot of times with VH1 they come in with a script and they already know what they want you to say, so they just feed you questions to give them sound bites for a script that exists. And we didn't do this film in that way at all. You know, we just sort of followed him around, and he was the script creator, and everything sort of came together, you know, as we're moving forward with the film. Like, it was completely verite. You know, it's pretty interesting.
I want to maybe pick up on that really quick, and just because so much of it is about what's kind of dramatizing the performance for a journalist. There's so many journalists interviewing him where he's putting on his answers for them. And then there's those moments of him that are meant to be felt as verite or as, you know, just him behind the scenes. He's such a performer, obviously. Yep. To what extent, I mean, how did you guys negotiate what was performance and what was, quote unquote, the real Lil Wayne? Was that even an issue in the way you were thinking about it? I mean, so much of like reality television now, of course, everyone knows it's all scripted. How much of this is just a tribute to him as a performer versus it being a kind of true look into his life, let's say?
I think it's a true look into his life in that, you know, in a lot of ways, I think a lot of entertainers escape through their craft, you know what I mean? So they become obsessed with work and fame or whatever else it may be. So I think, you know, for Wayne, this is his reality right now. I mean, we're with him 24/7, and we rarely saw him sleep, and we rarely saw him not recording or on stage. Outside of that, like he said it, you know, I don't have time for that other stuff, you know what I mean?
He does have time for Boy Meets World.
Right.
Which I thought was fantastic. Yeah.
But he watches that on the bus while he's recording, you know?
That's right.
So that's sort of his life right now. It's like 24/7 nonstop, you know, music, and that's why the music was such a big piece of telling the story, because he really speaks to his music. And what we realized is like his music really does sort of reflect what's going on with him. I think you learn a lot just by listening to his music.
Hi, my name is Jason. I enjoyed the documentary, and as a producer and a filmmaker, even as journalists, sometimes I think what we produce is a part of ourselves, even if the subject matter is not about ourselves. So is there a part of yourself that you wanted to communicate doing this documentary? I mean, it's obvious that he's a great subject matter, but was there something in him or his story that you wanted to tell about yourself?
That's interesting. I would say if there was anything, you know, I didn't actually direct this. It was Adam Bhala Lough. But the reason why I became interested in this and signed on for this as a company and executive producer was because I liked the fact that he went back to school. That was the thing. So I liked the fact that you can have a hip-hop image but still want to seek, you know, higher learning and that sort of thing. And I thought that was interesting, you know, mixing those two. We actually didn't get to that because of how the film was shot, but that's what drew me to it. If I had any personal sort of like personal interest in the film, that would be it. You know, it's sort of that he has these two different sides. You know, one is completely hip hop and reckless, and the other one was that he wanted to go back to college. You know, I thought that was interesting. So he's seeking two different things that don't seem to fit together, but he makes it happen. You know, so.
Also, if you can, will you tell us what happened and why he no longer supported the film?
You know what? We don't know specifically what happened because we went to his, bless you, we went to his tour bus to show him the movie, and it was our producer and just him and a couple of his friends, and he loved the movie. He loved it. Like, he was sitting there stomping his foot, laughing, and after it was over, he was like, man, you know, and gave our producer a hug and was like, great job. I can't wait to go to Sundance with you guys. And then, you know, a few days later, or maybe it was probably a few weeks later, just out of nowhere, right before Sundance, we got a call from another person on his team, and they didn't give us any specific reasons necessarily. They just said, pull the whole film, and we were like, wow. And that wasn't part of our agreement to pull the whole movie or nothing like that. So, you know, something must have happened on their end, and we've asked for clarification, and we haven't really gotten a whole lot of detail on it. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Kristen, and I'm a journalism student, so during the film I paid particular attention to the interviews. And I noticed that certain questions really turned Dwayne off, and sometimes he would just completely put his walls up. And I wanted to know if that occurred frequently during filming, and if so, how you got around it, because I know it's difficult sometimes to break barriers.
Yeah, that was the most difficult part about making this film, because we had originally intended to do like a chronological sort of just story on his whole journey, you know, and we wanted him to sit down and tell us the story from A to Z, and he was reluctant to do that because he wanted to just be him, you know, and just follow me around and just sort of capture me in real time, you know. He wanted to do something different, basically, so that was one of the challenges. But I think, you know, our director halfway through the film was like, you know what, I actually like this better because it's more intimate. And it's you know, it's a realer way to tell the story, and you get a sense of who he is just by sort of witnessing him, you know, day to day and in his private moments, versus like trying to confine the story to what Wikipedia already has written out. So
do you feel like that's unique to him, just being you gain more by following him around rather than asking him questions? Is that like usually the case when you're interviewing people?
Pardon?
Is that usually the case? Like you learn more by just following a person than interviewing them? I
think so. I mean, I think you can read between the lines a lot, especially in this movie. You know, when you're talking to his daughter and you see these different scenes, sometimes if you spell it out, you know, you might get a prefab answer from both sides. But sometimes if you sort of just let it breathe, you know, you can read other things from it. So, you know, I think with Wayne, he's such an unorthodox person, and he lives his life on his own terms. So, I mean, I think looking back, I think this was the best way to capture him. You know, because you can't contain it, as you can see. You can't just tell him like, okay, sit here and do this. It's not gonna happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Keandra. It was like an amazingly intimate film, and seeing how open Wayne was, I just thought it was kind of weird that for his friends, his drug use was kind of a taboo. And like what we see in the media, Baby is like really influential in his life, and he'll listen to whatever he tells him. So I'm just curious, like, has his father ever tried to talk to him about his drug use since his friends can't?
You know what? I don't know. I would hope so, you know. But you know, it's an interesting situation because you know his father's name is Birdman. You know, I mean, it's. I think a lot of that is interesting in itself. I mean, that's a whole separate documentary, I think. But you know, I don't know.
Hi. Actually, a lot of the questions I want to ask were brought up. I think the beginning where you, the mention where Lil Wayne didn't want to answer any interviews. I don't know why if that wasn't the intention of the film, why it's actually there in the opening. If the director didn't feel the need to ask, you know, to have those interviews, why you actually mentioned, because it's definitely a question mark, especially with the fact that obviously, which is great, you're honest about the fact that he didn't support the film, even though we obviously don't know why. So I guess my question is, like, do you feel some kind of responsibility, like, with the way you portray an artist like that, especially with all, you know, the stereotypes that go with hip-hop and things like that? It seemed like at the beginning there was quite a strong focus on all the drug aspect that then kind of weaves into the story. But so do you feel some kind of, you know, responsibility with those stereotypes and the way they're handled?
I always do. With anything that I do in any type of media, I feel a huge sense of responsibility. And, you know, we had made requests to get certain types of footage. And, you know, the artist had a certain way of looking at the project, you know. And on the other hand, you know, as a documentarian, it's our job to document, you know. And if we tell him what to do or, you know, try to coach it too much, then it becomes something different. So there's a fine line between those two things. But typically, if we're telling a backstory and we have access to archival material and that sort of thing, I mean, I feel a huge sense of responsibility. We were talking about that earlier, you know, and trying to like put something in each film that somebody can walk away with and say, you know what, I learned something, or I can improve my own life by what I saw, even if it's a film about something that may not even seem like a message-driven movie. So I feel a huge sense of responsibility on that end. But, you know, like I said, you also don't want to manufacture a documentary.
No, but obviously it's all about the way, you know, the way you present it. And I'm just putting it out there because also that whole case with him, you know, might be going to prison and everything. I mean, I haven't followed it very closely, but it does feel there's a lot of discrimination going on. It's like even an artist like him who's so much on the top. So I just was wondering if.
So I would say this, you know, this is all public, so I'm not, you know, putting anybody's business out there, but, you know, his camp, they have like gang affiliation and they make songs about gang affiliation, and he has teardrops on his face that speaks to that. You know what those mean?
No. Okay,
well, teardrops, they speak to things that you've done in your criminal past, you know, that's pretty heavy. It's worse than syrup. And and it's worse than the weed, you know. So, and then, you know, he had, you know, kids with 3 different women this year. That's also public knowledge. There's a lot of things we stayed away from for that reason. Sure. So if you take all of it out, you know, so we had to, you know, we were selective, believe it or not, you know. And
well, no, that's great. That's just what I was asking about.
And, you know, and like I said, you know, the messaging has to come from him. You know, we can't put words in his mouth. And he was supportive of the film the entire shoot, so that wasn't the issue during the production. So, you know, it's like maybe if we do another movie together and we work things out, then the next movie will be different, you know. And I always hope to make a movie that impacts somebody in a positive sense, you know what I mean? For sure, that's always the goal. But even if it's a sensational topic and you're able to jujitsu that topic into something positive, that's what we strive for. But you have to have the cooperation of the subject.
And he hasn't come back around at all in the film?
In terms of supporting it?
Yeah.
There have been some conversations, you know, so we'll see what happens, you know. Yeah.
Hey, QD, thanks for being here. I'm Lily. You know, I was watching it, and it was, I mean, it's so inspiring, and it's exciting to see, like, an inside look at this artist, but there was a part of me that felt really saddened by it. You know, I can definitely see some of myself in it a little bit in a weird way, but, you know, he was talking about how he was being himself, and I kind of felt like maybe he wasn't being himself. I felt like he was being Lil Wayne, the persona, like the character, even while the cameras were rolling, and, you know, you felt like he was maybe trying to be candid. And some of the stuff he talked about was sad. I mean, obviously the drug stuff was sad, but, you know, the part where he was talking about getting raped, like, yeah, it was kind of funny, but it was kind of sad. And, like, you know, everybody has that person that they are alone in bed at 2 in the morning. Like, did you get to see that glimpse of him, like, this sounds so like a therapist, but like the wounded boy underneath the character, like underneath the persona, you know?
No, you don't sound like a therapist at all, because that's what we wanted to bring out in the film when we originally created it, you know? But I think sometimes the more trauma and the more unresolved internal issues that you have, the more you cover it up, obviously, and you project sort of the bravado. And I think there is a lot of that going on, and I think every rapper has that. You know, like the whole the bulletproof vest and all that stuff, that's like costumes to keep you from having to show what's really going on. You know, like 50 Cent, same thing to some degree. Not saying that he's a soft guy or nothing like that, but you know, a lot of these cats went through crazy trauma as young to the point where unless they've gone through extensive therapy, you know, there's definitely some covering up going on with the lyrics, with the imagery that they have in their music videos, all of that, you know. So, you know, I think it would have been amazing to sort of peel some of those layers back, but now just might not be the time, you know, especially when he's, you know, he was just about to hit big time fame and everybody knew it, you know, it was kind of building towards that. So that's probably the easiest time to put on that persona, you know.
Right.
So, but I think if you read through the lines, between the lines, you know, I think you can sense a lot of things, you know, even here with his daughter, the way she paused at the end of her sentence, and you know, some of the things that he says that he laughs at, but you know it's probably not, you know, something he would really laugh at behind closed doors. So I think there's a lot of healing. He needs to see Layla. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Excuse me. Lil Wayne's crazy. He's beautiful, but he's crazy, and I think the documentary captured that really well. Now, I really enjoyed it, but I feel like if you don't have any kind of like contact with hip hop culture or that kind of culture that he was kind of expressing, you'll misunderstand and miscommunicate. Like, the film won't be expressed in the way that I feel like you and the director and Wayne were trying to put it out there. Mm-hmm. So what I was wondering is, for the audiences that maybe don't connect to hip hop as much or don't connect to that, what do you want them to take out, or what do you expect?
You know what's funny about that? I wanted to add one last thing to her, and it just hit me now, was that all that sadness that I think is being covered up by the lyrics and the imagery and stuff, I think that's usually what makes an artist great, unfortunately. It's that sort of internal conflict. Marvin Gaye, Tupac, Bob Marley, they all had pretty tragic, backgrounds in a lot of ways. Jimi Hendrix, Michael Jackson, like there's some type of internal struggle going on, and it's that pain that makes them create so well. Tupac, same thing, But to your point, I think, we played it at Sundance, and, we didn't know how the film snob community, who has really nothing to do with urban content whatsoever, they don't even really care. It doesn't move their meter whatsoever, and they love the movie because of how we approached it, because I think had we done the chronological thing, it would have just been like another sort of bio on somebody. But they loved the filmmaking, and they were comparing him to like Bob Dylan, because they understood his drug use in a different way than in the hip-hop context when they saw the film. They were like, oh, okay, this is Bob Dylan. That's the comparison that they were making. So we were actually surprised by that. So that's the takeaway that a lot of people have. I think, it made sense. It's a rock star sort of outlook.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you've got to rush off to the airport, but I really want to thank Dean Wilson for making this event happen. Thank all of you for coming. Quincy, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, man.
Somebody, when you need somebody, when you had somebody, somebody that made you feel like somebody, that somebody's gone and you need somebody.